Hello, and welcome back to another Breyer customization video. To no surprise, I get a lot of horse videos on TikTok, as you probably do as well if you go on there. So you might have seen this gorgeous Frisian knobstrupper cross named Noodle. I know his owner and fans would love to see him as a Breyer horse, and submitted him to the contest Breyer had back in July, and I hope he gets chosen. But why wait for Breyer when I can make one myself? So that's what I will be doing today. Of course I will be using this Vermeer mold. It's one of my favorite sculptures, and it's pretty accurate to a Frisian knobstrupper cross. I think it's pretty likely that Breyer would also use this mold if they did make their own version. You can see here I started prepping the model by sanding seams and logos, as well as the edges of the pinto markings. This edge is thin, but it can show up under the primer since it's made by masking off the bare plastic. Since I drilled an air hole in a less noticeable area, I can fill this one in and sculpt into the lip. I sculpt the epoxy with silicone tools and an Xacto knife. You don't have to do this, but I like the extra realism of removing the hole. Next, I smoothed some epoxy over a seam that was too deep to sand. I use 70% rubbing alcohol. I will also be adding some hair texture to the areas of the tail that got smoothed during the molding process. Once that had all hardened, I give it a spray with my Duplicolor Sandable primer. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, this does not work out. I really used to love this primer, but one day it just completely stopped working for me. I bought different batches, colors, sprayed in different places in different weather conditions, but nothing seems to work now. It just easily comes off. So now I have to use the more expensive Mr. Surfacer primer. But not yet knowing that, I began to paint him. I start with Noodle's pretty sun-bleached tips on his mane and tail. It's almost the same color as the primer. Next, I cover him with a gray base coat. With that dry, I go in with a darker gray to start the shading. I use the sculpture as a guide to emphasize certain areas. Next, I go in with pure black to really give him contrast. To give him that beautiful blanket, I will be carefully doing a few coats first with the airbrush. This will save me a lot of pain later because building up with the paintbrush takes an eternity. It's a little hard to see here, but I hold the airbrush quite far away and do short big bursts of spray to give him a light roning effect. Typically you don't want your airbrush to do this, but it's perfect for this technique. I try not to go too heavy-handed since I will be adding more later. With that dry and sealed with a matte spray, I can add the leopard spots. I make sure to have lots of pictures of Noodle to look at so I can get the size and shape of these right. It's not going to be exact, of course, but as long as it follows the hair direction in a way that makes sense. I use watered down acrylic on a long, thin brush. And then yeah, that's when I noticed the edges were rubbing off and I could easily scratch it off. I got so annoyed stripping paint with purple power that I bought a soda blaster. So here was round 2. I thought maybe I had done the first when it was too humid out. Unfortunately, I airbrushed it all again with just as much success. I even left it to dry for weeks. So the third time I used the expensive primer, and by then I was really good at airbrushing this design. So now we're back in business. I took a little detour from doing all those spots and touched up around the mane. Then I decided I couldn't put it off any longer and redid the spots. At least I'm getting lots of practice. Once that's done, I can add herring very gently with a watered down acrylic. I admit this isn't the best brush for this. It was a little hard to control and I had to go very lightly. I follow the direction of the hair in my reference. Using the same method, I go back in and add a little black over top. Once that all dried, I seal it with my matte spray, and now I can add black pastel. This will help cut down the brightness and blend it in to bring out the muscles again. I erase a little bit to have a few highlighted areas. Once that was sealed, I move on to the spots. I add a halo effect of pastel, making sure to still go with the hair direction. I also sealed that, and now it's time to add the colored pencil. I blend the harsh line of the paint into the soft pastel. I make sure to use a blending stump to help smoothen it. Now I can go in with the white and add more precise herring, as well as a more defined edge. I also add herring to the mane and tail. Can't forget to blend that as well. I go back in with the acrylic to add even more spots. I blend the black with more pastel. For the eyes, I start with a white base and add the black over top. I add a ring of dark brown and add light brown to the bottom while it's still wet. I also go in after with a little gold paint to add some special shimmer. When I filmed me painting the hooves, I was not even close to being in frame, but they are black, so not too much to them. If you watched my dapple gray unicorn, or any other horses with black hooves, it's the same process. After I glossed those, the eyes and the nostrils were all done. Time for the final result. I love how he came out, and I think he's almost as pretty as the real horse. I would love to see what Breyer does if they do end up picking him as a model in the future. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Definitely let me know if there's any other real horses you think should be made into a model. And as always, make sure to boop that like button and subscribe for more projects.